Welcome back. Today big news is Donald Trump has once again tied global diplomacy to economic pressure, warning that India could face further tariffs if his upcoming peace talks with Vladimir Putin in Alaska fail to deliver results, with India already burdened by steep U.S. trade duties. This move signals Washington's strategy of using economic tools to influence both Moscow and New Delhi. The warning has raised alarm in India, which relies heavily on Russian oil imports while also straining U.S.-India trade relations. Trump threatens new tariffs if Putin talks collapse. Donald Trump's warning of fresh tariffs on India, if his peace talks with Vladimir Putin fail, represents a sharp escalation in the intersection of global diplomacy and economic leverage. The statement, delivered by U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, made clear that Washington is prepared to raise duties on Indian imports, which already stand at punishing levels of 50%. The new threat adds further uncertainty to the already strained U.S.-India trade relationship and underscores how deeply the Ukraine conflict has begun to shape wider global economic alignments. At the center of the issue is India's continued reliance on Russian oil imports, which the United States argues helps keep the Kremlin's war machine running. Trump's team has made no secret of its frustration that New Delhi has resisted U.S. pressure to cut these energy ties. By linking tariffs directly to the outcome of the Alaska summit with Putin, Trump is sending a signal not only to Moscow, but also to allies and partners that economic tools will be deployed as part of his negotiating strategy. The message is blunt: if Putin refuses concessions in peace talks, India will be made to pay a price for its trade decisions. For India, this warning could hardly come at a worse time. Already facing slowing growth and mounting inflationary pressures, the prospect of additional tariffs could hurt critical sectors such as pharmaceuticals, textiles, and IT services that rely heavily on U.S. markets. Indian officials have described the move as unfair and politically motivated, pointing out that the country needs affordable energy to sustain its 1.4 billion people. New Delhi has also accused Washington of double standards, given that U.S. and European companies continue to find ways of doing business with Russia. The announcement has rattled international markets as well. Analysts suggest the threat is intended less as an immediate economic weapon and more as a bargaining chip to showcase Trump's toughness ahead of negotiations with Putin. Still, the uncertainty created by the remarks has unsettled Indian exporters, who fear being caught in the crossfire of great power rivalry. Whether Trump will follow through on his warning depends largely on the outcome of the Alaska summit. If progress is made toward a ceasefire or peace framework, the tariff threat could quietly recede. But if talks collapse, India may find itself squeezed between its energy dependence on Russia and the economic weight of the United States, a precarious position that highlights how global geopolitics is increasingly dictating trade flows and national strategies. Tariffs as diplomatic leverage against India's oil policy. Donald Trump's tariff threats against India are widely viewed by analysts as a strategic diplomatic maneuver rather than a purely economic policy. By warning that Indian imports could face even higher duties if peace talks with Vladimir Putin collapse, Washington is signaling that tariffs are being deployed as leverage in a wider geopolitical game. This is less about altering India's trade balance with the United States and more about pressuring New Delhi to rethink its energy relationship with Russia. Analysts quoted in financial reports have stressed that Trump's threats, while headline-grabbing, may not be sustainable in the long term given the deep economic interdependence between the U.S. and India. The backdrop to this strategy is India's purchase of discounted Russian oil since the Ukraine war began. These imports have provided Moscow with crucial revenue, while also helping India manage its domestic energy needs. From Washington's perspective, India's actions undermine Western sanctions on Russia and complicate U.S. efforts to isolate the Kremlin. By tying tariff threats to the outcome of peace talks with Putin, Trump is using India's economic vulnerability as a bargaining chip to reinforce his negotiating position with Moscow. This move communicates to the Russian side that the U.S. is willing to exert secondary pressure on Russia's trading partners, thereby raising the stakes in the Alaska summit. However, markets and trade experts remain skeptical about whether the White House would actually follow through on such tariffs. The U.S. and India have been expanding their trade and strategic ties in recent years, with sectors like pharmaceuticals, technology, and defense cooperation growing rapidly. Punishing India too severely risks damaging a key partnership at a time when Washington also seeks to counterbalance China in Asia. As Reuters reported, many traders see Trump's tariff warnings as hollow, designed more for negotiating theater than for long-term policy implementation. The threat may serve its purpose diplomatically, keeping both Moscow and New Delhi on edge without ever materializing into concrete economic action. For India, though, the uncertainty itself carries risks. Exporters fear that even the possibility of new duties could disrupt supply chains and weaken confidence in trade stability. The ambiguity surrounding Trump's real intentions complicates India's policy options as it tries to balance energy security, economic growth, and its evolving strategic partnership with the U.S. What seems clear is that tariffs, whether imposed or not, have become a diplomatic weapon in Washington's arsenal, a signal that economic policy under Trump is deeply entwined with foreign policy objectives. India denounces move as unjustified. India has reacted with sharp criticism to the United States' threat of further tariffs, calling the move unfair, unjustified, and unreasonable. Officials in New Delhi argue that Washington is disregarding the country's energy security needs while trying to force it into a geopolitical corner. For India, Russian oil has been a vital lifeline, enabling the country to shield its vast population from runaway energy costs. Since the war in Ukraine began, India has become one of Russia's largest crude buyers, taking advantage of discounted rates that keep inflation under control at home. The U.S., however, sees these purchases as undermining the sanctions regime designed to weaken the Kremlin's war effort, and the tariff dispute has now become the latest flashpoint in an already tense relationship. Indian policymakers insist that their reliance on Russian oil is a matter of necessity, not choice. With 1.4 billion people to support an energy demand surging, New Delhi maintains that affordable supplies are essential for stability and growth. Officials have also accused Washington of hypocrisy, pointing out that American and European companies continue to maintain indirect ties with Russia despite sanctions. The Indian government's frustration was clear when trade talks scheduled with U.S. counterparts were abruptly cancelled after Trump's team doubled down on tariff threats. For New Delhi, this move underscores a troubling reality. Its strategic partnership with Washington is being jeopardized by short-term political maneuvering. The business community in India has echoed these concerns, warning that higher tariffs could hit industries ranging from pharmaceuticals and textiles to information technology. These sectors are heavily dependent on U.S. markets, and exporters fear they will be caught in the crossfire of geopolitical rivalry. Economic experts have also noted that Washington risks alienating a crucial ally at a time when U.S. policymakers repeatedly emphasize the importance of India in balancing China's influence in Asia. By threatening punitive economic measures, the U.S. may weaken a relationship it has spent years cultivating. Still, India's response has been firm but measured. Rather than signaling a retreat from Russian energy, officials have doubled down on their position that national interest must come first. New Delhi has also quietly begun exploring whether alternative trade arrangements with partners such as the European Union or Gulf states could mitigate the impact of U.S. tariffs. The underlying message is clear. India will not be easily coerced into changing course, even under the weight of American economic pressure. As this standoff continues, it highlights how energy dependence and great power politics are reshaping global alliances in ways that could outlast the Ukraine war itself. Trade talks suspended as deadline approaches. The suspension of U.S. India trade talks marks a significant deterioration in relations at a time when both countries face mounting economic and geopolitical pressures. According to reports, Washington canceled the negotiations that had been scheduled for mid-August, just days after threatening new tariffs on Indian goods. The decision came alongside an announcement that additional duties would take effect on August 27 if Trump's peace talks with Vladimir Putin in Alaska fail to produce results. For many observers, this development signals that economic cooperation between the two democracies is being overshadowed by the larger geopolitical contest over Russia and Ukraine. For India, the cancellation is both symbolic and practical. Symbolically, it undermines Prime Minister Narendra Modi's efforts to deepen ties with the United States, which has long touted New Delhi as a central partner in counterbalancing China's growing influence. Practically, it delays progress on a range of trade issues, from market access for Indian pharmaceuticals and IT services to tariffs on American agricultural products. Businesses on both sides had hoped the talks would ease long-standing disputes, but instead they are now bracing for new barriers that could disrupt billions of dollars in commerce. The looming tariff deadline has heightened anxiety within India's export sector. Industries such as textiles, steel, and technology services are heavily dependent on U.S. markets, and the imposition of additional duties could sharply reduce competitiveness. Analysts warn that the uncertainty itself is already damaging. Foreign investors are reassessing the stability of U.S.-India trade relations, while companies are reconsidering supply chains in anticipation of rising costs. Even if the tariffs are not fully implemented, the mere threat of them erodes confidence at a time when India's economy is grappling with inflation and slower growth. From Washington's perspective, the suspension of talks and the tariff threat are part of a broader strategy to maintain pressure on India as leverage in Trump's negotiations with Putin. By putting economic relations on hold, the U.S. is signaling that it is prepared to use trade as a bargaining chip in pursuit of concessions from Moscow. Yet this approach carries risks. Experts caution that alienating India could weaken U.S. influence in Asia and complicate efforts to build a coalition capable of containing both Russia and China. As the August 27 deadline approaches, both governments face tough choices. If Trump and Putin reach a breakthrough, trade talks could quickly be revived. But if the Alaska summit fails, India may find itself locked into a damaging tariff dispute with Washington, one that could derail years of progress in building a closer strategic partnership.